pressed it. Thank you. But we're going to start it now. Sorry about that. And that was a good statement. I'm terribly sorry, guys. Thank you for that, Amanda. Good catch. Now, look, see, now I feel bad because I want this to be able to help everybody. But yes, the goal is not to stop people or silence them and tell them to say nothing. We want to empower people to do more and to help. Okay? So thank you for that, Tara. Definitely, I definitely appreciate that. Now, race is an essential part of one's identity. Being white may have little meaning to some whites, but that does not mean it has no meaning. All white people are white in the context of a society that continues to disadvantage people of color based on race. Being white is essential means not having to deal with those disadvantages and therefore not having to notice them. Schools can help foster awareness about the meaning of whiteness by helping white students develop a positive racial identity, which requires an understanding of systemic racism. While students may need to be reassured that they did not ask to be white or for any of the advantages that might come with it, they should also know that the reality in which they are embedded ascribes to unlearned privileges to their whiteness, unearned privileges to their whiteness. It is through seeing themselves in a larger racialized context that white people can begin to understand how they can work to change racism and change what it means to be white. The interesting thing of what I love about this is that this is so much of what I have heard from my white counterparts. I don't have any privileges. Being white doesn't mean anything to me. You see what I mean? Well, I didn't ask for them. Well, a lot of these things we didn't ask for. That's what makes it a luxury. That's what makes it privilege. You didn't go out there and saying, I want these things. No, they were given to you. But now that you have been given this, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do with it? These are the things we want to definitely think about and have healthy, meaningful conversations with other individuals about. And so adding to what Tara was saying, this is also how you rekindle some of those ally flames that were blown out by when they did the wrong thing or was discouraged. And so we have to also make sure when we're seeing things happening, not just for Black people, not just for Blacks helping whites, but other whites helping whites. When you're seeing other whites being attacked for something that they were doing with good intent, as an ally, support them, because that is also helping to end racism, because they were really trying to go against racism. So reach out to them and say, hey, you're really doing a good thing. I help you, or don't be discouraged. We're all learning. We're all in this together. It'll get easier or it'll get better over time. Let's not allow them to stop talking and to stop moving. We don't want that, okay? So now we're going to talk about some stuff. This is where we really start getting into all the different types of scenarios that were thrown at us about ally or anti or non-racist behavior, or somewhere in between where people were just flat out confused. Fear of speaking in times when silence isn't agreement. So this is the non-racist part, non-racism part that Eric was speaking on, where there's a fear of speaking out because I don't want to say something wrong. I'm silent, but it's not because I agree with the bad things that are happening to Blacks in America. So, family. I've experienced this. I see this firsthand, where there are children who speak out against racism, and they are in the marches, they are doing the campaigning, but mom or dad or sister or brother or grandma or grandpa are racist, and the advocacy stops because they have respect for that relationship. That's what made the remarkable YouTube video so great, is because it was a young lady actually going against her parents and their racist behavior, which is actually rare, because I am actually friends with people right now where they say that they're for us, but they don't see their dad or their grandma or their mom or their brother or their family members as racist. They look at them as just being ignorant. Because what they think is, well, if I say that they're racist, that means that might be saying that I'm racist too. Anybody want to shed some light on that? Okay. Let's try this one. Oh, Angela has a hand raised. Yes, Angela.
Sorry, it took me a second to get there. No, what you're talking about really actually reminds me of the Stanley Milgram experiment, where just because the person in charge was in the back of the room saying you need to shock that person, they got the answer wrong, that people would continue shocking. Now the person that they thought they were shocking was not really getting shocked, but it was an investigation into, why did the Nazis do what the Nazis did, and why didn't anybody stand up to them? And it was for the simple reason that power and authority that has been talked about so much really impacts people's ability. People don't stop and go, is this morally right with me or not? Because then when they do, there's a price to pay.
So tell me this.
Go ahead.
And this is where you can shed light, and I want this to be a learning experience. Being with those who are in those type of environments, how do you think, or what would be some great strategies they could use within the family structure?
I think that's a super difficult question to answer, because every family dynamic is different. Most importantly is just showing, loving them anyways, because they get to have that choice of who they're going to be, and I get to have the choice of who I'm going to be, right? So, and a lot of times when you allow people, I at least from my perspective and what I've experienced in my life, when I allow those people to be who they are and just recognize who they are and love them anyways, and then they see, oh, you know what, it's okay, she loves those worst parts of me, maybe I can investigate this. It just kind of opens those doors to really come from love.
Okay. I will add to that. Thank you so much for that, Angela. The only thing that I will add is that this is where your sacred box is challenged the most, because all of us do have different moral compasses, and the weight of what we value does vary from person to person. And so realizing that if you take on the belief of being an ally and fighting against racism, that may mean that may jeopardize some of those relationships you value. That's a scary thing to consider. It's an overwhelming thing to go through. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say that is potentially part of your reality. Loving them anyway, break down walls, truly open doors, completely agree. Thanks, Angela. That came from Eric.
Yeah, so just really quick. So, just dealing with your family, I think that's one of the things is like loving them anyway. and not getting them in a defensive mode. It opens, like she said, it's perfect. It opens that door, and you just, because if you shut them down, you're going to burn a bridge, and you can't open that back. A lot of times you can't open that back up, and it may be too late. But if you keep, it goes back to love, like you say, it's you keep that door open. It does allow you that chance to talk to them later, and soften. Instead of them hardening their heart to you, they're more open to it. So that was great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Tan, did you say that people have to get ready to hear the message? Well, I feel like I saw that. And I do agree that, yes, you have to prepare people, but we also have to deal with both sides. There are some people that are teachable, coachable, and be ready. There are some people that may not be ready. But what I'm saying is not choosing a side, but accepting that that may be a reality. Jay himself has separated from people who have unhealthy ideologies and who contribute to divisive type mentalities. I have separated from people. I didn't want to do it. We still were cordial and all of that. But at the same time, it was part of my reality at the same time, because I do have to think about what is the ultimate goal, what helps me move forward and all of that. And there's a way to do that. And I agree, like, I'm not with the burning bridges and acting uncivil and all of it. Jay just that's not how Jay operates. But Jay definitely believes that if time apart is needed, just understand what that may mean. I have a close friend of mine who had to separate from their family. And the interesting thing was, it wasn't until the grandchild was born. You guess that was interracial. They were in an interracial relationship. And so when they had the biracial child, the grandparents came and said, I don't care, whatever it is, I don't want to be separated from my family. So in that case, it did take the child to bring closure and bring everybody back together. It can be the simplest of acts or the simplest of things that could. So I definitely believe in don't burning bridges. And I do believe that we also have to make sure we understand the weight of any decision or choice that we make. Yes, Tara.
Hello. Okay, so this kind of goes back to a couple of slides ago when we were talking about the purpose of an ally is to plant seeds,
Right.
And to be hardcore converters. It's
Right.
It's the same ideology with your family. A good practice is what you're doing now on social media when you're engaging people. If you go into the mindset, especially with family, look, we're not breaking up, we're family.
Right.
I mean, at the end of this conversation, I'm going to tell you now before we start talking, we're not breaking up. You're my uncle, I love you, we're not breaking up. But since I've had to hear all this for all these years, I just want you to hear this. And just know, after we're done, we're still going to have that drink, or we're still going to go out there and finish grilling or whatever. But if I have to hear you, you have to hear me. And even if it gets hostile, I'll be like, okay, so now let's go eat. Like, whatever it is, if you are the one that has decided to be the ally and you're moving in love, which Love and Parable course is definitely something that you want to follow up this course with, so that you actually get a full understanding of what that entails and that level of openness. But when you're honest and you're not pulling punches, you're just like, look, this is hard. This is going to be difficult. I know you don't want to talk about this. I know you're going to cuss me out. I know what your stance is, but I need you to hear me. And you just decide what the end is going to be before you start. And then if you decide that, I mean, a person who's looking at you and you're like, I'm about to hug it out with you anyway. I mean, I know you just called me every name under the sun. I love you, kiss, now let's go eat. You have to be also willing to control these situations as much as humanly possible and just decide what your end resolve is going to be.
Correct.
And this is any relationship with your friends. I mean, it's the same decision. You decide it's not going to be over and let that person know, you know what, I know you probably want me some time to deal with what I just said, but I still love you and I'll see you at Thanksgiving. Whatever it is, don't feel like you have to burn a bridge. Plant seeds. Don't try to hard convert, because you're dealing with decades and generations of things that have been normal. You're shaking it up. So have patience. The same grace that I'm asking everybody to give everyone in conversations applies to whoever you're talking to. That's all.
Yeah, I also believe just meeting people where they are, and understanding why they think the way they do and where they're coming from and the experiences that have led them to their perspective. And that's more helpful to discuss it that way than to, in a Christian sense, Bible thumping. That doesn't really ever work. So
it's like talking about religion or anything. And thank you for that comment, because Angie tied right into it. She's like, it's like talking about religion or anything in your sacred box. If it turns contentious, no one will change their minds or hearts. Love the way you explain that, Tara. So true. Kudos to Tara. Yep. You'll be surprised how many of these conversations that Tara and I get into on the daily basis. Like, they start early in the morning and they don't ever stop till like 11, 12 o'clock at night. I find, and what I have seen, is that it's easier to have those conversations with things and people who are not so close to us. But when they become close to us, like it was just brought up, that's where it begins to be a little struggle. And church is one of those other places where it comes up quite often. And this is where we get a lot of questions about. And so it goes right back to how Tara said it. It's like, you got to plant the seed. Sometimes we are so convinced in trying to conquer things. We feel like everything must be done immediately. Sometimes it is about planting that seed and giving it time. And sometimes a wound can be so fresh that you don't need to poke at it right there. You need to give it a little bit of air. And so we want to make sure that when we start with this allying, that we don't burn ourselves out either in the process of trying to go through these extreme converting tactics of allyship. You're going to be an ally today. I'm going to give you 48 hours. No, it takes time. It may take 10 years for one person. It may take one moment for another person. I know several people that have been arguing with people with strong views, and then it takes one person to say something a certain way, and all of a sudden those light bulbs go off. And it's okay. And for many of us, for me, like for instance, my family, my fraternity, my place of worship, and my village and my community, they are extremely important to me. And so I don't like having tough conversations, but I don't mind having tough conversations, because one thing that I am confident in is in the foundation that we have. I was joking before you guys came on. Tara and I probably argue at least once a week. Okay, I'm lying. Once a day. We at least argue once a day. But the one thing we don't question is our friendship and what we're building. And so we're able to practice things where it's like, okay, I'll call you back at 5. Love you. Talk to you later. You know what I mean? It's never a question of that, because the foundation is established in what we have. But when we have strong convictions, we don't hold back as well. And then after we cool off sometimes, we're able to talk about it, or even in the same conversation, we're able to talk about it. But it's about realizing that, hey, these things are valuable. If it's not valuable to you, you won't argue about it. If it's not valuable to you, you won't fight for it. Things that are valuable for you, you fight for, you get upset about it because you care. And that's okay. If we look at it as our job to simply plant seeds, it's much easier to let others come when they are ready. A lot of times, until situations impact someone directly, it doesn't move them to change. And that is very well true. Some people have that gift where they can just like feel other people across the world and say, this is wrong. will it take other people for it to come to their doorstep? So, representation in our absence. This seems to not only come up more and more now, but now is hindering certain people from advocating. Because we have to make sure that people understand you can advocate for someone whether they're there or not. I'm an advocate for the American Disability Act. I'm not directly dealing with anyone who's disabled now, but that still doesn't mean that I can't advocate for the rights of those who do deal with disability. So you can fight racism, and you don't need Blacks to be present to fight racism. Even when it's a discussion that you're having, you don't have to tag a Black in there to validate you. If you know that it's going against, if you know that that's something racist that you're fighting, you have every right to go against it. Don't feel like you need a Black to validate you in your fight against this injustice. This is something that impacts all of us. And it's okay if we're not there. If a person of color is not present, it is okay. Trust me. And I guarantee you there are several people that are appreciative of it. And also, when you are challenging it, still be mindful of the way that you're challenging it, because it may be an ally in waiting, observing your behavior. Because you may say something that may be very well true, that may be very well impactful, but your delivery can damage more than the person that you set it out for. It can ricochet and hit someone who was in waiting because of the way that it was delivered. So we want to always be mindful of that. One of the things that we have in our village, the Love is a Parable Village, is when we get ready to have what we call, we've got to put our feelings out on social media. Someone in the Love is a Parable Village was like, hey, I get what you're saying, but have you considered saying it this way? Because it might be true, but you might be damaging someone in your passion. And so it may not even hit the one you wanted it to hit, but it may damage a whole bunch of other people. So we always want to be mindful of how we do things. Yes, Tara. Was that you had your hand up, Tara?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So on representation in our absence, because I want to always make sure that I'm looking at both sides of this coin, and I'm addressing my fellow Black people of color as well as this other thing. So when you walk up on something in social media or in real life and you see a white person addressing a white person, I do not jump in that. I do not jump in the middle of that. I don't immediately validate anything that's happening, because there is not going to be a learning happening. There's not going to be a strengthening happening where they are very confident and resilient in that representation if we are constantly jumping in. So if we get a break, we don't get to, use our voice at that moment, because we do have an ally actively learning how to be an ally and actually connecting and relating to someone who needs to hear what they're saying. I stay out of it. What I will do on social media, however, is I will encourage that ally for not wavering in their stance. So that, yes, it can be seen that, a Black person was present for this, but a Black person did not need to jump into this because we are handling our handle. And that has been a beautiful transition. It's been a beautiful thing, because jumping too prematurely will cause damage to our ally and to the conversation that ally in waiting might now run and hide because a Black person has now jumped on them, literally. I have seen it. So just learn some patience, really let this process happen, and just stay absent.
Yep. Thank you. Now, pro doesn't mean anti. Avoiding those triggers, for some strange reason, There are some people who believe that if I'm pro-black, that means I'm anti-white. Nope, 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 nope. There's some people who believe if you're pro-white, that you're anti-black. That is not the truth either. But now, there are some people who are calling things pro-white that are really pro-racist. And those are the things that we are against. But we're willing to have the conversation if we're not attacking one another. Like, it's several times people have invited me to a picnic. I see it all the time. Jay, would you like to come to our company picnic? Would you like to come to our church picnic? I don't get up and say, you guys are racist and da-da-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. No. There's always a time to talk about it. It's not time to talk about it at a picnic. Be like, no, I ain't want to come to this picnic, right? No, there's always a way to deal with things. There's several things we don't know. There's several things we're constantly learning. I give you a great example. My Black friends, I was part of the march in Columbia, South Carolina to remove the Confederate flag from the State House. Yes, I was part of that. That'll always be part of my history. I'm glad that we did it. The reason why I'm glad that we did it, it helped me understand something else. While everybody was upset about that one Confederate flag, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the state flags in the South have a Confederate battle flag attached to it. So, see, with that, it forced me to learn something I didn't know. So when people ask me, Jay, what is your stance on the removal of Confederate statues, Confederate this, Confederate that? Jay says, I don't care if they're there or not. I just want the other part of the history to be there as well. So if you have this this general on here saying he was this great person, well, show the Indians or show the blacks that he slaughtered too. Let's have a real history lesson. That's what Jay wants. Show who's there. If you ever travel down to the low country of South Carolina, they will even tell you how the Coosaw Indians were slaughtered. They will tell you, it's a marker that says they showed the colonizers the way, and then the colonizers had a big revolt and turned on them and killed all of them. The ones who survived joined the Seminole tribe down in Florida. We need to know the whole story, because what's happening is we're only knowing one part of the story and we act on what we think is true, but we're not doing our due diligence to be educated ourselves. So that's why we have to be careful. Pro doesn't mean anti. You can be pro whatever your heritage is, whatever your culture is. But we all should be together and being anti-racist, anti-racism. We can talk about all of it, and it doesn't mean we have to be against who we're talking to. Black Lives Matter too. Another thing that comes up, why can't we say all lives matter? Just because I say Black Lives Matter does not mean I'm saying other lives don't matter. The statement really is supposed to let others know that, guess what? Black lives matter too. That's why it's very important to understand history, understand the constructs that we live in, understand everything that Blacks are dealing with for them to make that statement. Black lives matter too. That does not mean white lives does not matter. That does not mean Hispanic lives does not matter. It does not mean our indigenous people lives does not matter. No, we just want to be included. Remember, we fight for humanity. Our life has value too. That's what Black Lives Matter is about. It's also very important to understand that Black Lives Matter is an organization and a movement. A lot of times you can't control the movement, but you can control the organization. There are several people right now who are part of the Love is a Parable movement who actually call themselves love advocates. They have helped us in everything, but they're not certified love advocates, which means they're not the ones who went through our program. So we want to make sure we're not lumping all of that together, but also understanding, one, what the statement means, two, what the organization is, three, what the movement is. But Black Lives Matter is not anti anything. It's not saying the other lives don't matter. Okay? Y'all quiet, so that means we understand, right? Okay. I was like, hope I didn't lose anybody. Okay, we good? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
but I mean, it is an important statement because that's a lot of the all lives matter thing. I think there's confusion from that end with what you just said. They don't realize that.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't lose anybody. I'm getting the yeses now. Okay, good. Thank you. I think this is something that it's hard for people to wrap their heads around at first, though. Yep, I agree. Cultural pride and heritage. This comes up a lot too, because a lot of people talk about, well, this is also my family. I get it. And let me say this, I also get when people bring up, you do know that there are Blacks who fought on the Confederate side too. Yep. Jay is fully aware. There's so many things that go into that. And so when people start talking about cultural pride and heritage, that still doesn't mean that part of that heritage wasn't so great to other people. For years, Holly Springs used to have on their website the true story about what they did. It said it was something about, it was the, I want to say, is it Tuscarora Indians in the area? If I'm saying it wrong, I apologize. Tuscarora Indians. It said it on the original one, and then it said right after that, then it was slaughtered by the colonizers. It actually said that, and like they cleaned it up now. But when I first moved to Holly Springs, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. But that was part of the heritage there. It was a part of what really happened. Now it's cleaned up because we want to be sensitive to certain things, but guess what? There should be some placard, something out there signifying who these people were. Yeah, it said it too. And they took it off, and the website was nothing like it was when I first moved up here. I was like, ooh, that's interesting. Hey, okay, at least they telling the truth. Cultural pride. One of the things that Angela and I was talking about is that being Black in America is not just a race. It is also a culture. So sometimes even being Black is hard to describe it if you're not Black. And so, like Tara was saying, a lot of Blacks are at different places, even in their Blackness. So the way that they articulate what it means to be Black, a lot of times there isn't a cookie cutter answer, because sometimes it's something that you just know. It's something that you can feel. It's something that you can experience. Yes, in Black culture, there is food, there is music, there is a certain way that we talk, a certain way that we do things. We can't explain it. It's just something that is in us. And also being Black is a lot of our history. Based on being Black, it goes back to all the different racial terms that we were called or classified to. A lot of people don't realize that our history didn't start on slave ships. We had a history way before slave ships, and that's part of our history too. And so being Black encompasses all of that. So depending on the Black that you speak to, they may be coming from different areas of Blackness. And so when they have a certain pride or a certain zeal in who they are, the one thing that every Black is proud of is the ability to withstand no matter what came our way. So yes, we can talk about everything, but it's still amazing that Blacks will highlight certain things that even happen that signify the strength of being Black, even in slavery. Like the fact that, yes, they were countless millions, some even estimated up to billions who actually died in the Middle Passage. But the ones who survived said a lot about the way that we can survive through anything. So when you're talking to someone who's Black, you're talking about all of that. And so when they have a certain, passion, that passion is coming not just from the present. It's everything that we felt. And so some people say, well, you weren't even a slave, so how do you, that still doesn't mean I don't feel it. I wasn't a slave, but it still doesn't mean I don't feel it, because the effects of slavery still impact us today. The level of restraint it takes us sometimes, given the situations that we are put in, it takes us back to that. Like when we start certain things, the one thing that I reflect on now is like, okay, this must be how the pioneers felt when they established certain things. I recall that, and I say, okay, so I need to be grateful because so-and-so fought for this, so I could have this opportunity. So therefore, I shouldn't go backwards. I should go forward, built on that opportunity. So it's so many things that actually do happen. Tamara, you said that notion works both ways. Which notion we're talking about?
When you said they would say to you, well, you weren't a slave, and you could say to them, well, you weren't a slave owner. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yes, thank you for that point. I love when people bring different perspectives. Just so we know for clarity, Angie sent me a message just to clarify why they may have taken it off the website, because the information may have been incorrect. And Angie knows this because she talked to all the historians about stuff. So that's probably why. But the one thing that even if it was wrong, I was like, wow, I just like the fact that somebody put truthful information on it, or just raw information, if you will. So that's probably why. So it may have been incorrect. And so that's maybe why they removed it. Thank you for that, Angie. So here's the other one. You know we have to talk about it. Property, people, and value. The conversation, especially over the past instances that have happened in the RDU. The rioting. There are people that I know personally who had stores in the downtown Raleigh area. There are people that I know who were personally impacted. There are people I have felt that from. But that conversation comes up quite often, meaning that I get protesting, but why do we have to mess up property? Before I answer that, does anyone want to give a stab at probably why? Anybody? Too uncomfortable to talk about? Okay, we're going to talk about it. The idea is that, remember we talked about Black Lives Matter, right? And we talked about Blacks are fighting for humanity. For so long, Blacks were considered property because we were perceived as cattle. That's just what it is. And so that ideology is still within the overall culture in America. So the idea behind it, let's clarify this because I don't want people to think that I'm defending looting. I want us to, looting and rioting, I want us to understand where it's coming from. If I damage your property, how you feel about that property, now take that rage and know how we feel about our life. Usually, people don't equate any action to any struggle that the Blacks are going through until property is damaged. Now, I recognize how that could be somewhat a distraction, but it doesn't take away the whole point of why did it happen to begin with. And so we have to have that conversation to say, hey, these people are fighting to be recognized as a living person, a human. So those are the things that people may never understand or try to understand, because there are several people who said, no, we're not for the riot and the loot. But what that does is hit them where it hurts, in their opinion, and say, okay, now you're mad about that mad about that property. That's how we feel about the bodies. Angie said, because peaceful protests have happened for so long and no one listened. Angela said, rioting hurts everyone. I think there was so much pent up anger that it just all came out in a hurtful way. Well, if we want to look at rioting, it also has happened historically in Black communities for years. If a Black was accused of something, the whole town was burned. If a Black was too successful, the town was burned. There are countless stories of what happened. One of the prominent stories of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but there were other Black Wall Streets too. That's the unique thing about that. There's several stories of Black Wall Streets, but there are also several stories of towns that were rioted and looted and destroyed and left with nothing. There's several places that we can talk about now where Blacks were rioted or burned and had to flee the land, and the land was taken for whatever reason. So rioting and looting has always been a part of the American culture, but it's a part that we seem to not understand until whites are impacted by it. It seemed like we skip all of the things through the history books, or even present things that have happened to Blacks and their towns. But when it affects certain things, we say, no, it hurts everyone. But for the most part, Blacks have been already hurting. And that's the part that we don't feel too comfortable with talking about, but it is part of our American history. Tamara said, what's the Nipsey Hussle comment? Yes, we're not the cause, we are the effect, is what Nipsey Hussle said. I keep seeing posts about how we all need to love one another and get along, but that doesn't address the root of the problem until you tear out the root. The same weed keeps sprouting up. I think it all makes us deal with what's truly in our heart, in our country. It got my attention more this time. Oh, y'all are fighting. Y'all doing fast. Got my attention more this time than in the past. That's the irony as well. Historical races, looting, including killing everyone there as well. We haven't gone that far because of the absolute backlash. Wilmington was majority Black. Yes, Wilmington was majority Black, even in this area. We talked about how Holly Springs was majority Black after the whites left it, after slavery. We can talk about, Mooresville. Actually, I thought it was Carpenter. I thought it was a Carpenter area. We can also talk about the Camden Village area as well. They even have a Black cemetery out there that It's amazing how we just built around it. It's really interesting. Yes, there are several areas where these things have happened. In my hometown of Augusta, Georgia, we are a river city. And whenever you go into Augusta, across the Savannah River, if you look at the Riverwalk, there is these stone pillars. And these stone pillars actually used to go to a town that was called Hamburg, South Carolina. And that happened to Hamburg. They burned the city down and they burned the bridge even to it. That's how bad they did it. And now no one really knows the story of Hamburg, even the people of Augusta. Black on black crime. Let's not bring that up ever, because it is scientifically known from a criminology perspective that intra, meaning same race crime, is always higher than interracial crime, because they usually live in the same area. And then when we talk about crime, we need to talk about what crimes are we talking about and all of that, and we lump things together. So we want to make it a habit of, let's not bring that up. And then and where that came from was actually from a supremacist, a white supremacist mindset, who said, well, blacks are killing each other way more than us whites are. That's where that came from. So that's another thing that people don't know. And bringing that up is nothing more than saying, okay, even if blacks are killing each other, that doesn't mean that they still want to be killed by others. So we need to just leave that alone and don't have that conversation. We need to focus on the situation at hand. And that killing everyone is wrong. That's the truth though, right? And one of the things that people don't realize when they bring that up, like it was another thing, it's another thing that I see. When they say, don't let the racist whites forget about the non-racist whites, we love y'all. That's another way of, it's almost like, it goes without saying, we know we appreciate y'all. We're not calling out even racist whites, we're calling out racism. Yes, there are racist whites who have, who perpetuate these acts. I get that part, but we all are against racism, all of us. And I think sometimes making certain statements like that still take away from the bigger problem at hand. We have an issue with really dealing with the root of things. We ain't gonna talk about it all lives matter, because we talk about it all lives matter with the Black Lives Matter too. So I think we kind of understand both, yes? Natanya said black on black crime rationalizes killing black people injustice. Yeah, that's how people look at it. You're right, but no, it's not. I don't see color. Please see my color. Please appreciate my color. Please know that there is a culture, a tradition, a history behind this color, and I want you to see it, because I see your color. I just don't want you to treat me differently because of my color. You know what I mean? But see my color. Color is beautiful. That's what makes us human. I love the variety of colors that we have. Don't come up in a society saying you don't see color, and then we also know it's a lie, because as soon as something happened, they be like, well, what was it? He was a black man, or she was a white woman, blonde hair, blue eye. You know, we see color. Don't lie to ourselves. We got to stop the look. This is one that is racially insensitive. White lie. Because if it's a white lie, it's not really a lie, and it's not really bad. But we don't ever say, I'm telling you a black lie. Do we? No, we just say it's a lie or a white lie. So if you say a white lie, it's not really a lie, even though it is a lie, but it's supposed to not hurt as bad because it was a white lie. See how people do that? So let's not do that. Let's not do the color thing. Let's not do any of that. When I was in elementary school in the 90s, and I feel like a whole don't see color thing was something that was taught quite often. I didn't question it growing up, but it's definitely something I've had to intentionally unlearn. Thank you for that. I have black friends. Woo. I'm just gonna put these together. I've seen so many videos. I'm sorry, I'll be the laugh. I've seen so many videos, and I've seen people who say, I love black people. I got a black friend. Like, listen, you don't have to have a point of reference to speak out against racism. You can be an all-white family, never knew anybody white, and say racism is wrong. You don't have to have a black reference to make you accepted by blacks, okay? And being in interracial families doesn't mean that you can't exhibit racist behavior, okay? Saying you got black friends, you don't need to say you got black friends to fight against racism. You don't have to say you got black friends to be some type of, to have some level of attachment to us. And then being in an interracial family, that doesn't mean that you still can't exhibit racism. Just because you got a black son, daughter, husband, that still doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean? You could still do that, because you could be, I have heard this, people like, we're ending racism because we got a black family. I got black daughters and all of this. We are progressing America. But say something ignorant out of their mouths. No, nobody gets a card. Nobody gets a pass. Nobody, we all learning. We can work on it. Carla said, Robin DiAngelo explains that after the civil rights movement, sympathetic whites wanted to separate themselves from white supremacists. So as a society, we started teaching the colorblind ideology as if it would be helpful. That's interesting, Carla. Thank you for that. That's why I love you guys. See, this is what we all learn. I'm gonna learn some more about that, Carla. Okay, and then here's the other thing, because it happens. Allying never stops. You never become the great ally. It is forever learning. And yes, you can be cool with Jay, but you can offend Tara. You can be cool with Tara, and you can offend Jay and Natanya. You can be cool with all three of us, hang with us every week, and offend Lolita. Don't ever think there's an ally card. There's something that people say in the black community like, oh, they cool, we can invite them to the cookout. That don't mean that you can say anything all willy-nilly. That don't mean that you can do anything all willy-nilly. No, we are forever learning, and we want to always be mindful of who we are around and the things that are coming out of our mouths. But talking about race doesn't make you a racist. But we can become too comfortable and start saying some stuff that's a little slick. And we don't want us to say those things, because that can hinder our growth. And then we'll say, well, what happened? Well, it's just that we got comfortable with the ones that we knew. But guess what? Remember, we told you that there's all different levels of blackness. There's all different experiences. And sometimes you don't know what other people have been through until you engage with them. I wish there was a nodding emoji, because I'm just nodding away up here. Greg said he loves when your son. Yeah, that Georgia come out quick, man. Yes. So you want to make sure that you don't ever overstep your boundaries, and don't ever assume. It's like we're always learning. Don't ever assume that we got this ally thing just under lock and key. Nope. We are learning together. And when in doubt, look, that's when you call a black friend. When you don't know what's going on, you're like, hey, I think something just happened. You know what I mean? That's okay then. But don't use it. You don't need a black friend to fight against racism. You don't need to tell your bloodline. Like we saw a video where somebody said they got an adopted nephew and they black. So he understand what they went through. No, you won't understand what we went through, but you can understand that racism is wrong. Okay? So you don't need all of those points of reference. Just get to it and say, yes, we got to end racism together. So let's continue to move forward together. Look, right at 7:35. I love it when things work perfectly. So the takeaways, I want you to continue the takeaways from the previous days, but I want you to find ways to influence dynamic or cultural change. that is simple. We've been putting different little tidbits in the group, so you can look at those. Tamara had a great one on her Facebook where she talked about it. Just go through your Facebook friends and see how many people are really your friend, like your friend that you didn't meet at work or something like that. How many of them people that are of the different race that you really met outside of basically your comfort zone? That's eye-opening. Engage with them, talk to them. That is huge, because she had me thinking, and I was like, I don't know how to answer that, because if I didn't meet him at work, I done met him in the community because I was acting, and now I do Love is a Parable. I'm like, I'm trying to figure out. You had me sitting there thinking, so I was like, I'm gonna have to wait and come back to it, but I'm gonna do it. Find ways to utilize your privilege to provide opportunities for those who don't. Engage in random acts of kindness projects. There are so many different ways that you can use your privilege in places that other people don't know. The fact that it's a random act of kindness, you can influence. If you know people who can change the policy on something, if you know people who can change the culture on something, use it. Because you're getting this incredible knowledge to impact change. And guess what? Nobody have to know you doing it. That's what make it random. So guys, I thank you for taking this time to learn, and especially those who've been with me all 3 days. I do apologize for not recording the first part of this class, but I do have this part, and I'll make sure I load what we have. And if you have any questions about anything, feel free to reach out to me. Visit loveisaparable.com. Garrett has put the survey in. I need your feedback. We need your feedback to make sure that we're doing a good job in areas that we can improve on, like hitting record when I need to. So stuff like that. But whatever it is, please reach out. And also, guys, let's stay connected, because this is a journey that we have to continue. So we want to make sure that we all stay connected and we all continue to move forward together. And so I want to check on you to see how things are going. If we need to do a refresher, let Jay know. Okay? And also make sure y'all visit Authors and Art if y'all in Raleigh. It's a dope place. I live there religiously. So make sure you do that. Tara, thank you for helping me facilitate this course for the last 2 days. Thank you for helping me get all of this together. I love you so much. You guys have a wonderful night.
Thanks, Jay.
Bye.